You think silence is peace for the narcissist? No. Your silence is their worst nightmare, the one they never want to face. It's not the arguments, not the tears, but the silent, steady, cold, absolute that sends them spiraling in the dark. Because when you stop speaking, you're not just walking away, you're tearing apart the entire script they spent so long directing. And that's when the truth begins to surface, the truth about what really happens inside the mind of someone who survives by controlling others. In today's video, we're going deep into the chaotic psychology a narcissist is forced to confront when you choose silence, and why this seemingly gentle choice has the power to destroy them more than any confrontation ever could. If you've ever felt manipulated, gaslighted, or made to doubt your own reality, this is your roadmap back to your inner power. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the end of this video, because your silence is not surrender. It's a battlefield, a quiet but mighty battlefield, where you reclaim your voice, your truth, and your worth. When you choose silence, you're not simply declining their familiar invitation to play an emotional chess game, you're flipping the entire board. They're no longer the one holding the pieces. And what terrifies them isn't losing you, it's losing control over your emotions. In the narcissist's distorted world, you were never seen as a real person. You were a tool, a living mirror reflecting back their grandiose illusion that they are worthy, powerful, and in control. But now, with your silence, that mirror shatters, and they begin to panic. There's no argument, no pleading message, no desperate look. It is precisely the absence of reaction that sends them spiraling, because in your silence, they cannot read your mind. They cannot predict your next move. They don't know whether you're waiting, letting go, or preparing to expose the truth. And in that murky space, something they fear more than anything begins to rise: uncertainty. To a narcissist, uncertainty is enemy number one. They live in a universe where they are the center, and everyone else orbits them like planets around the sun. But when you step out of that orbit quietly without fanfare, the entire system begins to collapse. They cannot bear the thought that you are moving on without them. And here lies the most bitter truth for them: you are happy without them. No more reactions, no more tears, no more fear. The calm in your eyes now stands as undeniable proof that they are no longer the center of your world. And for a narcissist, that isn't just a loss, it's a devastating blow to the false self they've spent their whole life constructing. You see, they may try to resurrect the past, send sweet messages, claim they've changed, even threaten or smear your name. But none of it comes from love. It all comes from fear. The fear that you've truly seen through them and chosen yourself over staying trapped in the cycle of pain. And the one thing they never imagined you capable of: walking away without a goodbye, without an explanation, without a single plea you've already done. And that is what plunges them into their deepest crisis, yet an ego collapse. A type of implosion that no apology, no reconciliation can ever mend. Do you know what truly terrifies a narcissist when you go silent? It's not the loss, it's the emptiness you leave behind. A void they cannot fill with empty promises, dramatic gestures, or the emotional performances they once used to manipulate you. Because when you are no longer there to react to hurt, to forgive, their emotional stage crumbles. And they are left with no one to perform for, only silence. And in that silence, your strength becomes undeniable. Your silence, which may seem like a disappearance, is in truth a wordless declaration: I am no longer an actor in your play. And you don't need to shout to explain or to prove anything, because awakening doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be clear. So clear, in fact, that your silence becomes a mirror, one that ruthlessly reflects the empty spaces within them, the very things they've always tried to avoid: loneliness, inadequacy, and the fear of being forgotten. And the irony is this: they're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing the version of you they used to control. They fear your awakening, because once you've truly awakened, you'll never again be a source of emotional supply for them. And that's when their entire emotional operating system, built on manipulation and external validation, begins to malfunction. So what do they do next? They pull out all the stops to lure you back into the old game. Sudden sweet messages, revived memories of the good times, even tears not born of love, but of strategy. And if you don't respond, they escalate to the next weapon. Insults, smears, intimidation. Still nothing. Then they flaunt someone new, post happy photos, and wrap themselves in the costume of someone who's moved on and thriving. But don't be fooled. Every tactic has the same purpose: to provoke a reaction. Because in their eyes, as long as you react, you're still playing their game. And as long as you're playing, they're still winning. But this time, you don't react. This time you remain outside of it all. Silent, but not broken. Quiet, but not weak. And that is what sends them into a crisis they can neither control nor explain. It is the collapse of the ego the moment they are forced to face themselves with no reflection, no validation, no one left to manipulate. Do you know why your silence is so powerful? Because in a narcissist's world, a world built on illusion, image, and control, your voiceless absence is the first crack in the wall they've constructed. And with each day that passes as you remain silent, unattached, unbothered, that crack widens, until their entire sandcastle of false power collapses. And then when every trick has failed, when the messages go unanswered, the happy photos stir no jealousy when apologies, threats, and even their silence all meet the invisible wall of your peace. They begin to free-fall into the darkness of their own making. There is no longer someone to manipulate, no more script to perform, no gaze to meet to feel important. For the first time, the stage is empty, and the audience has left without needing a finale. That is when the collapse truly begins. For a narcissist, not being admired isn't just inconvenient. It's a psychological threat to their very sense of existence, because their entire self is constructed through the eyes of others. And when you choose silence, you don't just withdraw your words, you remove the last mirror that reflected their fabricated value. And in that darkness, they don't see the powerful being they once believed themselves to be. They see a hollow shell, afraid of abandonment, afraid of being forgotten, afraid of having no one left to cling to. And the worst part, for the first time, they have no one left to blame. You didn't curse. You didn't react. You're no longer present for them to manipulate. You've stepped out of the game, and that precisely is what they cannot bear. In the midst of their inner chaos, they might return wearing the mask of the remorseful ex or the mature friend. But don't be mistaken. This is not transformation. It's just an upgraded version of the same old tactic regaining control. They don't come back to apologize. They come to test whether you're still the emotional supplier you once were. They pretend they want to rebuild. But the truth is, they're checking to see if you're strong enough to say no. And this is the defining moment. When you continue to stay silent, continue to withhold reaction, and refuse to fall into the old trap of misplaced empathy, that's when the real earthquake hits them. It's no longer just fear. It's exposure. It's abandonment, left alone with nothing but themselves, no mask, no audience, no role to play. At that point, you are no longer the wounded one. You are the mirror of truth. And that truth is blinding to a soul that has only ever survived in the shadows of illusion. You've walked out of the storm. But the remarkable thing isn't the storm behind you, it's the quiet, hollow space ahead. Because leaving a relationship with a narcissist is not like taking off an old coat. It's like untangling your nervous system from a looped melody of love, hurt, apology, hope, disappointment. And now, without that soundtrack, the silence doesn't just come from them. It rises from within you, and so you begin to face yourself. The stillness after walking away from a narcissist can sometimes feel more unsettling than the chaos you had grown used to. No more controlling messages, no more emotional plot twists, No more games of affection and withdrawal. And strangely enough, you begin to feel empty. Not because you still love them, but because your mind has never known life in such undisturbed stillness. This is the phase where many feel most fragile. Some go back. Some send a message just to end things properly. Some share an old song or a fading memory not to return, but to prove to themselves they've moved on. But dear one, remember, every time you reach back into that dusty past, you're inching closer to the trap. Because the most skilled manipulators don't need to be present to make you miss them. They've planted invisible hooks in your mind. Each time you fall silent, they haven't truly disappeared. They've programmed your emotions like an alarm clock, and at just the right moment, it rings without ever needing to be set. That's why true silence isn't just the absence of messages. True silence is inner disconnection. It's choosing yourself over waiting for their version of closure. It's learning to live without needing someone else to confirm that you are worthy of love. And this is where the real healing begins. Rebuilding from within. When you redefine yourself, step by step you begin to uncover a truth you'd never fully grasped before you can survive without anyone's validation. You no longer look into someone else's eyes to determine your worth. You no longer live under the weight of "they were cold today, so I must have done something wrong." You stop playing the exhausting game of decoding another person's moods as though you were some emotional analytics machine. Instead, you begin turning inward. You revisit the journal entries you once wrote through tears. You listen to old recordings of your voice and realize you were pleading for something that never truly existed. You write a letter you'll never send, not for them, but for your past self. A letter of apology, a letter of forgiveness, an imagined embrace for the version of you that endured so much without anyone noticing. And little by little you begin to come back to life. Not in the way people often expect, not by getting revenge through success, not by saying, "Look how well I'm doing without you." No, you no longer need a stage. You don't need witnesses, because now you live not to prove anything, but to feel that life truly belongs to you. You start doing the small things you once abandoned, sleeping through the night without checking your messages in fear, taking a walk without having to explain where you're going or with whom, listening to a song without having to be cautious that they might take it the wrong way. Freedom doesn't arrive like a revolution. It flows in like a quiet stream, gentle but unwavering. And with each passing day, you realize you don't need to be loud to show you've healed. You only need one thing: to be honest with your own feelings. When you no longer need closure, you already have your answer. There's something a narcissist deeply fears you'll one day understand: that you don't need them to end the story. They want you dependent on an explanation, on a reason, on a respectable conclusion. But real growth doesn't come from hearing someone explain why they hurt you. It comes from no longer needing that explanation. You don't need closure. You are the closure. You understand now that not everyone who leaves will apologize, and not everyone who hurts you will ever acknowledge what they've done. But you still deserve to heal, not because they've changed, but because you deserve to live a life unburdened by wounds that were never yours to carry forever. And this is the deepest truth you discover in the silence. Silence is not a tactic to win. Silence is the path you clear to step away from a battle you never needed to fight in the first place. When they come back and you're no longer there. You know narcissists always come back. Not out of love, not because they've realized their mistakes, but because they've realized they've lost control. In their eyes, you were never just a lover, a friend, or a companion. You were a source of emotional supply. And when that supply runs dry, they do the only thing they know: restart the cycle. Don't be surprised if one day, after months of silence, they send you a vague message: "I miss you." Or even, "I just listened to that old song we both loved. Are you okay?" Maybe a few days later comes a longer message about how they've matured, how they've been to therapy, how they now see your worth. Don't believe it. Don't hope. Don't soften. Because if you're clear-headed enough to really observe, you'll see this isn't reconnection. This is a test. They don't want the full story. They just want to know if they still have access. And if you respond even with a single word, you've just confirmed it, the door is still slightly open. But if you stay silent, that's when the transformation begins, from victim to villain, from the wounded ex to the smear-campaigning accuser, from the one who once swore they'd die for you to the one now painting you as unstable, dramatic, cold-hearted. All of these roles serve one purpose: to trigger a reaction. Because your reaction equals proof that they still exist in your mind. And in their world, to be reacted to is to exist. You begin to be reborn without needing an audience. And yet what they don't realize is this: you're no longer standing where you once were. You've stepped out of the maze they built with charming words, calculated embraces, and carefully performed tears. You've entered a new place where you no longer need someone else to prove you are worthy. You begin to feel truly alive. Even the smallest things carry the power to heal. A morning where you don't anxiously check your phone. A cup of tea made just to soothe yourself. An afternoon spent doing nothing but listening to the wind through the window. And then it hits you. You used to live as if waiting for someone to choose you. But now you have chosen yourself. You begin rebuilding your boundaries not from anger, but from self-respect. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn that you don't have to respond right away. You learn to listen to your body, to rest when tired, to cry when sad, to hold yourself when it hurts. And that is what rebirth truly looks like. Love is no longer proof, it becomes harmony. After everything, you come to a simple yet profound realization. Real love doesn't give you a headache. It doesn't make you guess. It doesn't make you question your worth. Real love makes you feel at peace in your own skin, not like you're chasing someone else's emotional weather. You realize that love isn't about enduring. It's not about sacrificing yourself to the point of exhaustion. Love is choosing someone to walk with, not to carry. Love is having a voice, keeping your space, and being wholly yourself without being punished, shamed, or threatened with cold silence. And then, you begin to thank yourself for daring to walk away, for enduring the long nights of doubt and the empty mornings, for resisting every temptation to just check if they still care, and most of all, for choosing to carry on, even when no one applauded you, even when there was no tidy, happy ending. Because you don't need a perfect ending. You need a new beginning, healthy, whole, and real. The final silence is transcendence. And when you're strong enough to look back, you'll understand silence is no longer a reaction. It's a state of being, a quiet but powerful affirmation that I have ended the old chapter and I don't need anyone to validate it. The narcissist won't understand how you've become so calm. They won't understand why you haven't fought back, haven't exploded, haven't begged. But they'll feel it even if they never say it. The game is over. You've left the stage. You haven't just walked off the role, you've torn down the whole theater. No more scenes, no more spotlight. Just them, left alone to face themselves. And you are walking on light and free into a life that no longer needs an audience, no longer needs a script, only needs the truth. You no longer the victim, but the creator of a new life. They once believed you'd come back, that you were just temporarily angry, that you'd soften again, send a message, forgive like you always did. They placed their bet on your shared history and assumed that history would repeat itself. But this time, you're not coming back. Not because you're cruel, but because you finally understand. You understand that not every kind of love is worth preserving. You understand that pain is not a prerequisite for proving loyalty. And most of all, you understand that you no longer wish to live as a supporting character in someone else's story. Your silence over time is no longer a defensive wall. It has become a sacred space, a place where, for the first time in years, you are finally listening to yourself. You no longer wait for messages. You no longer wake up hoping they've changed. You no longer feel the need to prove that you are good enough to be chosen, because now you have chosen yourself. And that is the greatest choice a person can make after being manipulated to the depths of their soul. Stillness, as a form of prayer. Sometimes on sleepless nights you'll still remember the familiar look in their eyes, the sweet words that once made you feel loved. That's not weakness. That's the survival instinct of a heart that once clung to pain just to feel a trace of warmth. But instead of returning, you learn to sit with the memory. No judgment, no denial, no reaction. Just quiet breathing alongside it, watching it drift by like a gentle cloud of smoke. And then one day you realize you no longer need that memory to feel whole. Your silence is no longer a weapon. It becomes an inner prayer that from this moment forward you will never again betray yourself for anyone. You will no longer keep quiet to appease others. You will remain silent because you cherish your peace. Old ending. New beginning. You were once the witness to manipulation, to coldness, to the panic that hides behind a narcissist's false confidence. You were once submerged in the cycle of love, pain, apology, hope, disappointment. But now, you are living proof of an undeniable truth. You can walk out of the darkness and never look back. No revenge needed, no apology required, no battle over who was right or wrong. Just life, living authentically, living gently, living deeply, living without scripts, living without the stage. And if you've ever found yourself wondering, do they still think about me? Do they regret it? Let me answer you with the simplest truth. What matters is not what they think, but that you no longer need to know. You are moving forward, and every step you take in this new life is a powerful declaration that you survived, and now you are truly living. They were the old chapter, but you are the author of what comes next. With ink made of awakening, with rhythm made of peace, and with a heart no longer fractured, but whole in the very silence you once feared. Closing words. Silence your shield and your light. If you're at the beginning of your journey into silence, don't fear it. See it as a magical doorway, a passage through which you'll meet the most authentic version of yourself. A self no longer hidden beneath false sweet talk, no longer distorted by mind games, no longer waiting to be loved. You are not weak for choosing silence. You are strong because you dared to walk away without demanding a final scene. And when you are brave enough to dwell in that stillness, you're not just escaping a person. You're breaking free from an entire belief system that once weighed down your soul. And that is enough. Keep walking forward. And if you can share your story not to bring anyone down, but to lift someone else up, someone somewhere may be reading these very words and recognizing themselves in the journey you've just walked through. Because in the end, you are not just a survivor. You are a torchbearer. And your silence, though it makes no sound, is casting light. For yourself, and for others still learning to walk through their own darkness. When you choose silence, you're not just walking away from a toxic relationship. You're rescuing your own soul. You don't need to slam doors, shout in rage, or demand justice. All you have to do is withdraw in silence, in calm, with a clarity so piercing that it alone is enough to bring the narcissist's illusionary world crashing down. Don't let anyone convince you that silence is weakness. Silence is the greatest act of inner strength. When your emotions are no longer dictated by someone else, when you no longer need external validation to feel worthy, you've stepped into a higher stage awakening. You are no longer the victim. No longer the one trying to fix everything. You are the survivor, the healer, the one who now knows your worth without needing anyone's permission to claim it. And when you don't react, don't reply, don't return, you are sending a message to the universe louder than any scream. I do not need a destroyer to feel alive. I choose myself. And in that moment of choosing silence, something miraculous happens. You begin to hear the real voice inside you, no longer drowned out by false promises, manipulative apologies, or affection laced with agenda. but your voice, strong, sincere, whole. If you're on that path right now, know this. You are not alone. Millions are learning how to hold their boundaries, how to finally listen to themselves after years of emotional chaos. And you, yes, you are becoming an inspiration to them. By refusing to react, you're starting a quiet revolution, and it runs deep. If what you've just heard has made you feel seen, understood, and empowered, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because here, we're not just dissecting the mind of the manipulator, we're guiding you back to yourself through every word, every breath, every step of your healing. You deserve peace. You deserve a love that doesn't require suffering. And you deserve to live, not to serve someone else's ego, but to let your own true worth shine. We'll see you in the next video where your voice will no longer be silenced, but heard, honored, and held.